Welcome to the Au Jus. I'm your host, Beefloaf. This show is being sponsored by our friends, Punky's Pizza and Pasta, located at 2600 South Wallace. My personal favorite eatery in the neighborhood. They have the best selection of pizzas and pastas, as well as sandwiches and salads of any eatery in Bridgeport. Don't believe me? You can try my Sock Summer's favorite, the pot roast sandwich, which is best in class. Teresa's favorite, the Old Neighborhood Pizza, a Sunday fave of the 108ers. My personal current favorite is the chicken parm sandwich, but rizz it up. Get it on garlic bread, an undefeated upgrade. Bonita Sticky claims that Punky's has the best burger in the neighborhood, and she's tried them all. Hit the website, punkyspizza.com, for all of your carry-out or delivery orders or to cater your next party. You can also call 312-842-2100. The Scarlotta family will take care of you. Punky's Pizza and Pasta. Also, we have tickets on sale for an upcoming live show on Wednesday, March 27th with SoxMachine at the newly renovated Ramova Theatre at 3520 South Halsted Street in Chicago, right here in Bridgeport. We'll be in the Ramova Loft portion, which is a 250 capacity venue. Tickets are $22 in advance, and you can go to removachicago.com/shows/ to buy tickets. You can also hit the link in the show notes. Get those tickets now before they're sold out. This show is also powered by you, the loyal 108 supporter. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Feel free to tickle the undercarriage in the process. Like, comment, turn on notifications, and most definitely super chat, because that's how we get paid, and that's how we continue to make the content you know and love. Tonight's guest.
Yeah,
he's formerly the host of Intentional Talk on MLB Network, one of the biggest baseball shows in the world. Currently, he's a broadcaster for the Los Angeles Dodgers, and occasionally you can find him in the anchor chair for a sports institution that is SportsCenter on ESPN. He's also a long-suffering White Sox fan like the rest of you. Stephen Nelson, welcome to the Au Jus, my friend. Good to see you.
Beef. It's wonderful to see you. Sorry I kept you waiting for like 120 seconds today. It's been a mad scramble. A stressful scramble to get ready for this thing. I didn't realize that I was going to be braving the elements, but I figured the rain and the gloom that is Southern California right now would be better than the symphony of small humans, also known as children, that my wife is corralling right now.
Wrangling, if you will. It's funny you mention that because my daughter just turned 14 in January. And my daughter and I have exactly. I mean, she's going to high school, Steven. She's getting, you know what she's getting close to? She's getting close to being behind the wheel driving a car so she can pick her old man up when he's had a few too many at the bar. Now, that's going to be something great for me, to be honest with you. But
I was going to say that's a plus. I thought you were going to say, I thought you were going to say dating, which is, I mean, we could do a whole Au Jus just on how you're going to tackle that.
That is true. That is, I don't want to think about that. I'm trying to think of the upsides, not the potential downsides. So.
I like that.
But her and I have this tradition that we've been doing for years, and it probably dates. I want to say we started doing it way more during the pandemic, but it probably dates before then. Where on Friday and Saturday nights, if I don't have going to Sox games or whatever, we have like this big wraparound couch in my living room. And we'll have like sleepovers down in the living room, and we'll stay up late, watch horror movies or whatever. And one of these times, I wake up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, and I have ESPN on, and I look at the screen, and you're on it. You're on the doing SportsCenter, and so I'm like, holy shit! And she wakes up and she's like, Dad, what's wrong? I'm like, that guy on SportsCenter, I know that guy. She's like, really? How do you know that guy? I was like, well, anyway, she was like, okay, fine. I went right back to sleep. But regardless, starstruck to see you there.
I was going to say, you got up to go to the bathroom. Nothing inspires a bowel movement more than seeing my face on television. So sorry for ruining your tradition with the family. But I tell you what, I applaud you and Mrs. Beeflow for making it through 14 years, because we're like 2.5 years, and we have two young ones, both under 3, and it's like we keep reminding ourselves, as much as we complain now, it's like we don't know shit, we don't know anything. So yeah, Godspeed to you.
I appreciate that. Don't worry, it gets better. You'll start sleeping more. Well, actually, you'll lose sleep for other reasons, not just because they weren't awake.
Don't lie to me. Don't lie to me on this show.
I would never do that.
Hey, you know what? You'll love this. You'll love this. I know it's your show and you're going to ask questions, but just real quick. So
bring it to me.
I'm hustling out here, and my wife is like, "Hey, are you going to wear? You're going to wear that on like this podcast interview, like, you know, the internet, she literally said the internet lives forever. I was like, you don't know who I'm going on with. You don't know.
If she knew I had a sleeveless shirt on, and it's a cat shirt, and it's a picture of Straliota, who was a cat internet legend, and it says, "Why you know, give me the hams." That's the kind of show you're coming on, Steve. That's the best. That's what we're going for here. Now you're in Los Angeles. You're working with the Dodgers, and the Dodgers had I want to call it a historic offseason. I think it kind of is a historic offseason, in the fact that they acquired two of the most talented players that were available on the market. You know, Shohei Ohtani to me is like Michael Jordan of MLB at this point. And I didn't know a lot about Yamamoto, but Yamamoto was the high-ticketed pitcher coming over from Japan and inked $300 million there. Steven, just to ask you, like, as far as the excitement level, but also as, like, strategically, they nabbed two of the top talents in the world. And, of course, that works in favor of being a better baseball team. But how much of this is they're making themselves into a worldwide brand by grabbing these players that have personas that are gigantic compared to kind of the rest of the sport?
I think that is a secondary bonus. Make no mistake, though, Beef. Like that's a huge bonus. And look, the organization has said as much since then. Like their hope is to have an entire generation or multiple generations of Japanese baseball fans repping Dodger blue, wearing that LA crest or the Dodger signature across their chest. Like that's. I think anybody with a working brain understands the power of the Asian market, and with Japan specifically, within baseball specifically, like it's just genius, right? But it was secondary to acquiring the baseball talents that are Ohtani and Yamamoto. But it is a long-term investment, not just for, fans, right, in buying jerseys and hats and tickets and watching games on television and selling rights and selling banners and advertising around the stadium and so on and so forth. But it's also a sign to the other up and coming players in NPB or in high school baseball, which is an institution in Japan, that, hey, the Dodgers are the home for you. Now, they open themselves up in the future to counter recruiting, to use that term or steal that term from college football, where other teams and organizations can say, hey, player X, like, why don't you carve your own path instead of following them and playing in their shadow, like, come be the guy here. So that remains to be seen. But again, I think it is a massive move in baseball and in business for the Dodgers. No question about it.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it was very forward thinking, and not just from the player acquisition standpoint, like you mentioned, Stephen. Like, it's great to have two of, let's say, the top 20 players, and you already have Mookie sitting there too. So you have tons of star power on the roster, and it's gotten to the point in baseball where basically everyone realizes you either want to develop your own talent or you want to pay top of the market, because those are the guys that hold up the best. You kind of want to stay out of the middle markets as much as possible, or like. Try here or there in the middle markets to find the talent, that you can squeeze out.
Well, hey, let's save the White Sox talk for later, Beef.
We'll get to the middle market mistakes some teams make. But I also, on the heels of RSNs crashing all over the place and revenue sources for a sport like this, it's not the NFL. They can't just roll out of bed and then all the money's there and it doesn't matter. Like, baseball to me seems like it's in a transitional point where if it wants to keep accelerating, it needs to be looking in the other markets. And for the Dodgers to start off with doing this, and to me they already have Mexico in my mind, because I'm a little too young for Fernando Mania, but I remember it as slightly in the past. And so I'm Mexican by origin. And Mexican people love the Dodgers, just because of the pipeline there. Adrian Gonzalez playing there too is another really helpful thing. So Stephen, how much do you think is the brass looking at it and saying, look, we've got to do it in a way where, we got infinite sources of revenue coming through here as this thing matures and continues?
I think that's an awesome observation. I really do, because look, you mentioned the RSN bubble, which has burst. Now the Dodgers are sort of buoyed by their network deal because they own the network, right? And so that sort of it's 25 years. I forget what it was. That was obviously predated my time with the organization, but so that is kind of already in the back pocket, so to speak. But look, football is king in this country, right? And so I think it behooves not just the Dodgers, but Major League Baseball, the NBA, all these other sports leagues to look outward. Okay, we're not going to overtake football in this country anytime soon. So what inroads can we make elsewhere to create more revenue flow? And so and while the focus for the Dodgers was Japan this offseason because the headlines generated by Ohtani and Yamamoto, I think you've seen the league over the last handful of years invest heavily in South Korea. We have the Seoul Series coming up. The Dodgers and Padres will kick off the 2024 season in a couple of weeks, playing a game in Korea, whether it's London, Mexico City, Tokyo will get one. Paris will have games that's all between last season and 2026. So I think the league has recognized, hey, let's try and tap into these international markets here. And it's not just like the top of the market. They're trying to do grassroots development. MLB China is a thing where, Ray Chang, he was a part of Team China in the last World Baseball Classic. He has worked there and trying to create a stronger pipeline for up and coming Chinese baseball players to, say, continue their career playing collegiately in the U.S. That's something that they're trying to do. We've seen that already with Japanese talent. So I think it really is sort of like a multi-front that's a bad word, multi-front push into international markets to see how they can grow and strengthen the MLB foothold internationally, and then each individual team as well. So that's sort of like the macro view of it, but I think you're spot on that that teams are going to try to do that. And it's not just the big market teams, keep in mind. I know the Dodgers with the two signings, they signed Hyung-Suk Jang, a 19-year-old Korean pitching prospect, but look at the Pittsburgh Pirates, like a couple of their top prospects are Taiwanese. So, and anybody who watched the last WBC saw how electric an atmosphere there was in Taiwan for those games, and Yu Chang hitting multiple grand slams. And I mean, it was nuts, right? So I think that opened a lot of eyes, whoa, it isn't just Japan, or it isn't just South Korea, Asia as a whole, the Philippines, that. I think that we'll see more progress, in those countries within those cultures for years to come.
Stephen, looking at it too, and you bring up the NBA, and the NBA did have a push like this, and this was about 30 years ago.
Yeah,
and it started, and the tipping point of that push was the Barcelona Olympics, when they had the Dream Team, and they were out in front of everyone there, and you had MJ, but the gestation period didn't take that long, to be honest with you. It was probably 20 years before there were a lot of players from new markets into the NBA and interest of the NBA basically worldwide. Do you think the MLB could get on that fast of a track, or do you think this is a slower growth just because the game is different?
I mean, that's tough to forecast. I mean, we'll have to revisit that question, a couple decades from now, sort of like we do now with basketball in the NBA. Seriously, the impact of the Dream Team and what that did for international basketball, and kind of inspiring players from all walks of the earth, whether it be Yao Ming in China, or Dirk Nowitzki in Germany, or Tony Parker in France, so on and so forth, right? We'll see. This year figures to be the tip of the sword, though. I think with having Ohtani and Yamamoto on the same team, and sort of having all the eyes of the baseball world on them, whether they're rooting for them or rooting for them to fail. Right. That's a part of it too.
It's a great point, Stephen, because I grew up, obviously we're Chicago people. I grew up with MJ, and obviously MJ is the hero. But I'm sure in Cleveland and in Detroit and in Milwaukee, they hated MJ. Indiana, they hated MJ and they wanted them to lose every single time. So it's a great point of like, yes, to some, this is the hero, this is the savior. To some, this is the villain. This is the one that snatches victory from you.
Yeah, what's that quote, right? You love me or hate me, you watched.
Right.
And so I think people are going to watch the Dodgers. And again, while I do believe that like the ball has already been rolling, with the game of baseball is not new or foreign within these countries. Like their leagues, NPB is legitimate baseball, KBO legitimate baseball, right?
Correct.
So Major League Baseball isn't the be all end all for the game, but those leagues will be the first to tell you that Major League Baseball does run point. The rule changes or technology, like Major League Baseball is at the forefront, and it's beginning to become a two-way street in terms of player talent, right? It's not just a one-way, Hideo Nomo coming from Japan and that's it. Now you have players, going and playing in Asia and resurrecting their careers. Eric Fetty, case in point, right?
Yeah, right. Perfect example.
So, but like technology also is flowing both ways as well. So, we'll have to revisit that, but I definitely think that this year's Dodgers could be a stronger push for that ball down the hill.
Absolutely. Back on Ohtani for a minute. One thing that came through in the deal, $700 million for 10 years, and then it's almost all deferrals. It's like
$680.
$680 million, $2 million a year in cash, $680 million in deferrals. Steven, do you think that this is a weapon that MLB teams will start using more often? Or is this just a weird case where a guy is making so much money outside of playing the game that it could fit in well?
I think more the latter. I think it's a super unique contract for a, lifetime unique, universe unique talent in Ohtani. Look, deferrals aren't new, right? Max Scherzer's contract with the Nationals, or even Teoscar's one-year deal with the Dodgers too, right? Bobby Bonilla, all these things are known within the game, but that level of deferral, it did. I like when the news broke, and it was like there's going to be a massive amount of deferrals, but the number wasn't out there. I remember like jokingly responding to text messages from friends being like, "Ohtani," and I'm like, yeah, I would just like one of those deferral payments. And then, and not knowing the figure. And then the figure came out, was like, I would just like $68, I'd forget like a full 68 million.
Take some interest on one of them years of
so it was sort of mind blowing, but the fact that it was on the table for all of those finalists, right? The similar structure or the same structure was there with the Giants negotiations or with the Blue Jays negotiations. It does speak to more the individual that is Shohei Ohtani than any sort of like nefarious trend that the team is trying to start within the game. Look, I actually think it's sort of just at the other end of the spectrum. The past handful of years, you look at the Atlanta Braves, who, by the way, are still viewed as the favorites in baseball, according to the odds makers, despite all this activity for the Dodgers, right? Every time they acquire talent or they lock up talent for these long-term deals that are objectively under market value, and everyone's freaking out, like, how does Alex Anthopoulos keep getting away with this? Like, he can't keep getting away with it. Like, so they're like getting crazy value for their roster. This is just like a different way of that in my mind anyway. I don't know if the economics of that are apples to apples, but like I just think that an organization sort of using something that is explicitly written in the CBA, there is no limit, there is no max, and they're tapping into that and a player's desire to be there, both LA, Atlanta in this example, and using it to their competitive advantage. And if you're a fan of a team in sport, baseball, basketball, whatever, if you would want your favorite team to be doing that. And as we know in this game, in baseball, that is not the MO for every single ownership group or front office, which I think is a shame for fans. because then it
Yeah,
turns the ire toward players or organizations when it's like you should just be looking at your own front office and wanting more out of them.
Right. Yeah. No, I wasn't trying to imply it was nefarious. I thought it was an
Oh,
interesting
no,
tool because when you're in a let's talk about contention windows for a second. Make as much as it makes me want to cry. When you're in your contention window, the idea would be to try to channel as much talent as you could in there. So deferrals would be a great way to do it. If you could defer, and obviously the cap hit isn't, or I don't want to call it the cap, the luxury tax, but it's like a cap. Yeah. It's basically the cap. Hit isn't exactly the same, but you do get some sort of break there. So it would give you the opportunity to take one or two more shots at other talented players. And so, that's kind of what I was curious. I don't think anyone's going to defer 95% of their salary, but you might get a situation where, someone okay, well, I'll take one for the team here and I'll defer a little bit out. That's kind of what I was thinking a little bit, but.
If it was you or me, we're not guaranteed tomorrow. I'd like that 70 up front, please. You
exactly
know what I mean?
Right. Yes.
Convert it to a signing bonus. Actually,
give me the whole thing right now. Is what I'd like. Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, definitely. That I was with you. I didn't mean to imply that you were implying that it was nefarious. No, I think the other point is on the deferral topic is again, just how unique Shohei is and how he approaches his life. The only things he cares about is playing a baseball game and then preparing for the baseball game. That's it. And he obviously wants to win. And so that's a huge move to make, to show the organization, hey, I want to win. I don't want you to be sort of hamstrung or handcuffed by, my record-setting contract. So I'm going to do this. Now, last point, he has the luxury of doing that because of all the money that he is bringing in away from the field. I mean, it's been talked about between 50 and 40 and 60 million off the field this year alone, right? So it is a totally unique situation.
I would agree there.
One that we would like to experience.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if I was already making 40 or 50 million, you could defer a little bit of my money. That'd be fine. A super chat from Bruhan Luke. He says, "Cheers, fellas. Steven, Sco Ducks. The grass is damn green in Eugene." He says. So
hey Bruhan. So for those who don't understand, I lived and worked in Eugene for the better part of 3 years. I worked at the local TV station KEZI in Eugene. I did cover the other side of what is known as the Civil War rivalry, Oregon State. I covered the Beavers more than the Ducks, but make no mistake, I have love for all of the Willamette Valley. I'm a platypus. If they know, they know. Beeflo. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Love Willamette Valley too, because I'm a wine guy, so that's terrific.
See? All right.
It's been a few years since I was out there, but Mrs. B.
Wait. Hold on. Out there. Is it because the slogan it isn't a baseball wine and bullshit. It's baseball
beer. Yeah. No, it's so I do get some crap for that for liking wine, but I love beer too. I'm not I'm not discriminating against anything.
Anybody who besmirches your good name because you want to stick the pinky out every now and again,
Who needs them?
Yeah.
Who needs them?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Now, Steven, Otani's got all these deferrals, and so it set my mind racing here, okay? Do you think at some point those deferrals get converted to ownership stake after he's no longer a player? Players cannot own ownership while they're playing. But after they're playing, I see Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City, and he's owning parts of the Royals, and it seems to me that the modern player understands that equity is important, and so it just got my mind racing. What do you think?
That's a fascinating. I mean, it's a legitimate question too. Not only fascinating. I mean, in theory, he'd have the funds. It's just it comes down to personal desire. Like all these athletes, whether it's Mahomes, as you reference, or, LeBron's involvement in Fenway Sports Group, right? Like they're expanding their business portfolios. And so if that's something that appeals to Shohei down the road, then I don't see why not. Now, that, I don't know. I hadn't thought of that before. That's really interesting. I mean, it depends how involved he wants to be, or if he wants to be Magic Johnson. I take him for example in his
Right.
involvement in the Guggenheim Group, right?
Yep.
I don't know. The easy and safe answer is that he'll have some options.
Yes, he will.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So we talked a little bit about different markets in baseball, kind of the maturity of the Asian markets, but then also some of the places where the MLB is trying to get a foothold. Steven, if you were handicapping it, what do you think are some of the next emerging markets in MLB, either for fans or for talent acquisition for the teams? Because it does fascinate me sometimes as to where baseball is really popular and then regions very close to it where you think baseball might be popular and it's not. So I'm curious if you have any thoughts on like where will baseball expand next as far as like even just acquiring players?
So I think I sort of hit on it earlier, but I do think that Taiwan and China will kind of. I think again those wheels are sort of already in motion, but it does seem like there's a concerted effort to strengthen the pipelines there, and so that's why. And we're starting to see some of the fruits of that labor. So that I think that's sort of the first. Those are the first answers that come to mind. I'm curious to see how the games in Europe have an impact, because obviously it's such a football, soccer heavy part of the world.
Right.
Well, I mean, I guess what part isn't, right? It's, I think after cricket, I think soccer is the second biggest sport in the world. So like a baseball game in France. Like are French people going to give a damn? I don't like I don't. Sorry if there are any French members of the 108 that that take offense to me speculating about that.
They might be the few baseball fans that are French. I agree with you. I have no idea. I haven't decided. I don't know. It's cool, and I like that you made the connection to soccer, Stephen, because I was thinking about this too. Is like. Soccer doesn't have the limit, like in baseball, similarly, does not have limitations on size, right? To play basketball, you need to be big. I mean, let's be honest with ourselves. Yes, there are some people that maybe like I'm 6'2", around my height can survive in the NBA at this height, but you need extreme skills. But for the most part, you need to be a lot bigger than that to be like the median player. But in soccer and baseball, you don't need to be ginormous to succeed in it.
No.
And that's why it's always surprised me the soccer nations don't churn out anyone. Like you have Brazil is very close to Venezuela, yet Venezuela kicks out all these baseball players. Brazil has none. I mean, like there's like three Brazilian baseball players ever. It's weird to me.
Yeah, or like Curaçao's like size to professional output is nuts, right? Like
exactly.
pro player per capita is kind of otherworldly. I don't know. I really don't know. What I'm excited for, like I'm a huge World Baseball Classic guy. Like I was fortunate to call some pool games last year in Tokyo, the motherland, and it was just sort of like it was life-changing, right? But sort of seeing how that tournament really captivated the entire world. Australia had its best World Baseball Classic ever, despite not having three of their best talents play. Liam Hendricks was out at the time. Curtis Mead, who's a prospect in the Rays organization and, highly regarded. And then Travis Bazzana, who's going to go within the top 10 picks of this upcoming draft out of Oregon State. Like Australia did well. I mentioned the games in Taiwan and again, and then from start to finish, so the pool play games of the teams that, didn't advance out of pool stage to the end of the final with Ohtani against Trout to cap it off. Like it was just so massive for the tournament, for the sport. And so then the next installment, we're not going to have to wait 4 years for it. It'll be in 2026. So I'm just amped up for sort of the growth of that tournament as well, because, that will be a huge, huge factor in the conversation we're having right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I found the World Baseball Classic exciting, and me and my friends all watch it like at whatever hours the games are on, waking up early or whatever time we need to do it. So just great fun for any baseball fan. I totally agree. So I hate to go on a downer note, but let's talk about the White Sox for a little bit, Steve.
Hey, man.
I wanted to pick your brain on some stuff on the White Sox.
Let's do it.
But we'll leave this fun conversation. Back in August,
Yeah.
Jerry Reinsdorf shocked a lot of the fan base, yours truly included, by firing Rick Hahn and Kenny Williams. What was your immediate reaction when that happened, Stephen?
I was stunned. I was stunned. I think I said it on the air during a Dodgers broadcast, like totally serious. And I had, family and friends like texting me like, LOL. I was like, I said on the air something to the effect of, I'm surprised that they even did anything. Because and people are like laughing, ha ha ha. And I'm like, no, but really, like you aren't familiar with my life as a fan of this particular team and my experience within this. So I was floored. Like one would have been shocking. Both at the same time was flooring. So it was like it felt like a watershed moment at the time. And then it wasn't long before I believe it was Bob Nightingale put out like, oh, it's Chris Getz and Dayton Moore, and I tweeted it. That might have been one of my last tweets actually. I haven't been on the Bird app in many months, which has been very healthy. But I tweeted that I tweeted the meme of that dad or grandpa getting a new shirt of the new version of the shirt he was wearing.
Yes.
And I was like, if you get rid of that, but then you replace it with this sort of same who's in charge, convoluted structure, like how much is really going to change? Now, I think on the bright side, if we were to be positive and glass half full, is that did not happen, right? Chris Getz has sort of been given the runway to build out his own front office and kind of build the FO in his image. So we'll see how it pans out. But at the time, in the moment, I was like, I can't. I was a lot of expletives. Like, I can't believe this is happening.
Yeah, my guy Baloney in the comments says Beef loves that shirt meme. I do love that shirt meme. I try to use it whenever I can. It's hilarious.
It's a classic. Look, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And that meme is definitely not broken, right?
Yeah, so you're right. The honeymoon lasted about 24 hours. White Sox fans were dancing in the streets. That they actually did something. I don't mean to dance on anyone's grave, but it wasn't working. It was time to move on, and that Jerry finally did that. Next thing you know, it's not that long later, and he's hiring Chris Getz officially, even after we had heard all the things. Right now, what are your early impressions of him, Stephen, at the job he's been doing? It's only been 6 months, so it's a little early, but what are you kind of thinking so far?
Totally. I think what makes it hard to properly answer that question or diagnose the state of the White Sox is that you really don't know where their foot is. Is it in? Is it out? Is it like 2024? They have thrown all those platitudes at the fan base of how they want to compete because of the division they play in, and they want to make a run at it, and they want to bounce back, and yada yada yada, and that's all well and good. But if you're Chris Getz and you want to start fresh, I want a new canvas, I want to totally rebuild, you would understand. And honestly, as a fan, you might want to, you might prefer that if it weren't for the fact that we just got out of that we just went through that, and there is still some like it hasn't even scabbed over for a lot of people. We haven't gotten to the scar tissue point. So I think that's what makes it a tough sell. So it's really an impossible question to answer 6 months in. I think you do appreciate, again, if you're trying to not be cynical, it is very easy. That's in our blood. It's in our blood.
It is.
If you are born into this fandom, if you are born into the black and white, you are cynical by nature and you are dead inside, for the most part. So
pretty much, yes.
but if you're trying to put that cynicism aside and be fair, you would say that he has done, whether it's the Aaron Bummer trade or the Santos trade, of, okay, all right, you're trying to. But one of my biggest complaints about the last regime was how heavily they invested, stupidly so, in the most volatile position in the sport, and that's bullpen. That's the relievers. Like, you are spending way too much time doling out big money contracts to guys you might not know are good in 6 months, let alone 1 or 2 years. So
Right.
okay, Chris Getz trying to get some value. How valuable those pieces are that he got back from Atlanta and Seattle respectively remains to be seen. But you can see what he's sort of getting at here. I am glad that he hasn't tripped over himself to move Dylan Cease. I know that's been a huge topic of conversation in this brutally slow offseason in baseball. It's what are the White Sox going to do with Dylan Cease? And what I agree with sort of being patient and sort of letting the game come to you, to use that sports cliche for Chris Getz. So again, I'm intrigued by the hires that he's made in the front office. Brian Bannister, probably chief among them. So it's hard to hate what he's done so far. And for a team, the last point I'll make in answering that question, or attempting to, is they're trying to reset the clubhouse too, which was a mess. It was a mess. If that wasn't obvious externally, then I think obviously then the moves have made that obvious over the last year or so. So bringing in some of the veterans that they have, who are maybe on their last leg or have something to prove, or who guys who respect 90 feet, those sort of things that I can at least see what they're attempting. Whether it works, I don't know.
Right.
I don't know.
It feels like a fine micro move, but maybe on the macro level, that's something that fades off as you start to kind of build out the talent group that you want. But in the short term, I agree with you, Stephen. I don't mind that at all. I don't mind them going in that direction. You brought it up briefly. Getz actually redid the front office, and so that's something we haven't seen in a really long time. One of my Rick Hahn complaints was, when was the last front office guy you saw get poached from the White Sox because he's so talented and someone other team wanted him? And so Chris Getz, one of his first moves, he goes out in the marketplace and he gets Josh Barfield from the Diamondbacks to be assistant GM, and then he gets Brian Bannister to be the pitching czar here. You mentioned Banny already, so that kind of a little bit answers my question here, but which one's the more intriguing hire to you, and why? And what intrigues you about these two hires? Because to me, they meant a meaningful shift in the way the White Sox are going to do business here, and I was happy to see them.
Yeah, look, okay, so just to rewind a little bit, just on the Getz hire in a vacuum, I think the thing that White Sox fans, if I could speak for the fan base for a minute, it won't be the entirety of it for sure, but I think what was so aggravating about the move, it was just another insular hire, right? It's always about process. I hated the process that led to the hiring of Tony La Russa, in addition to not agreeing with the hire on the whole. And I'm not trying to drag us down the TLR hole, but
you're right. The process was the worst part for mostly everyone. Even people were okay, Tony, whatever, I don't care. But they didn't try to go and see what else is out there. That was the problem for a lot of people.
There was no attempt to, as you sort of alluded to in your last question, okay, I want the best and brightest, or the understudies to the best and brightest from the organizations that are doing it right. Okay. And so that's why people are constantly rating Tampa Bay, not just the front office, but the R&D department. That's something that Kevin Cash, he loathes. He's it pisses me off, how we constantly lose guys. And because all these, big market teams are throwing, not just, bigger titles and responsibilities at them, but bigger pay. And, Andrew Friedman of the Dodgers is the leading example of that, right?
Well, because you're not just losing the talent. What you're losing, too, is some knowledge, and could be proprietary knowledge. Not that they're stealing a database or something, but they knew how that got built, and so they can go somewhere else and do it.
Correct.
There's so much to gain by grabbing someone from the outside, just from that perspective.
Yeah. Right. And so the process was flawed, in addition to being rushed, and the fact that was sort of volunteered out there, that I didn't want it to wait. He basically said, it would have taken a year to. Yeah, I think after the last.
What's wrong with that?
After the last 30 some years, maybe you should take a year to reassess how you do things. That I don't know. Maybe I'm the insane person, but but now that like how it happened. Okay, so now it's just let's see how Chris Getz does. And so to get to your question about Barfield and Bannister, I know Jin Wong a little bit too, and I really like Jin, and sort of the role that he played in Kansas City for all those years. I mean, I don't know exactly what his day-to-day is going to be like with the White Sox, but like you talk to people in the game about the moves that Chris Getz has made, and it's on the whole, it seems like people like them. I will lean towards Brian Bannister because he has been at the forefront of sort of knowledge and revolutionary knowledge or practices before in the game, and so I like the idea of someone who is forward thinking and maybe trying to find the blank space or the missing piece or the next piece of the puzzle to help get better. So I hope he has the runway to do that. And I think that's what's the most intriguing part to me. I think that's what intrigues me the most.
Yeah, Banny has what I would call the growth mindset. People have, you talk about different mindsets because he's always on the search for how can we get things better. We know that the thing that we learned about someone to get them better, people are going to copy it. The edge will erode. We got to find the next thing. He seems like he's always on a search for trying to find the next thing that's going to help a player or an entire group of players or whatever. So
right, and I want that as opposed to being late to the party. Right, I want like let's experiment here. Like, what new technology is being used? I think everybody's now sort of tapping into the TrackMan or the Editronic or the Rapsoda, all these different tools that are out there and accessible to pitchers now. So, all right, well, how can we either find new information, better information, or present the information in a way that is attractive to our players coming up, players we're trying to acquire or recruit. I just like that mindset. So I'm really hopeful for him and Josh and really I even though I work for the Dodgers now and I wear an LA crest, like the White Sox part of me didn't die, and I mean that sincerely. Like, for better or worse,
Well, you mentioned the cynicism, Steven, and you mentioned that you've been off the Bird app and it's been healthy for you. The White Sox fans right now, they're still very hurt. They're damaged. And we
have a right to be.
We have a right to be. Exactly.
Yeah.
But my fellow White Sox fans every day, they're mocking the team in spring training if anything goes wrong. Yeah. And to me, I'm like, I kind of want to root for them to do well. But then I see no problem with people mocking them. Like, I'm like, you're entitled to this.
100%. It's like, it's that saying about grief. Like, people grieve in different ways. Like, some people, they want to just like get away from it, like sit in silence and be with their feelings or their loved ones, and some people want to go out and take a sledgehammer to the world, and some people just want to make jokes and find a humor in it and meme their way through it, right? And
That's right.
however you want to grieve, however you want to process as a White Sox fan, that is your God-given right. And so you do what you got to do to get through another dark tunnel in your life as a fan, to hopefully a glimmer of light and hope in the not too distant future. So I know I haven't, again, I'm not familiar with the current state of White Sox Twitter, but I can only imagine.
It's in shambles.
It's in shambles?
It's in shambles. Well, I mean, people are still there. So here's the thing, though. Sometimes when you're over something, you just you are over it and you don't pay attention to it anymore. That's not really happening. People are still there and they're still mad, and they're a lot of it is they're rooting against them. Just as a way to cope,
I know where you're going.
Like you mentioned, Steven. There's a lot of that right now.
And I think that there's also my buddy Lawrence Holmes. I was just on his podcast, and he's kind of has this bit of he's trying to find a new team, right?
Yeah.
And, and we had some fun with that, trying to recruit him to the Dodgers or whatever. But I like there is a swath of the fan base that sincerely is like, I'm pulling the ripcord on it. I'm taking a break until this organization shows that it's serious about putting a quality product on the field in front of us, as opposed to quality ticket sales or short-term, like low impact marketing game ploys and like the bullshit of the business, as opposed to like the heart of it, which is put a winning product on the field and people will come. This fan base has shown that. If you have a winner or a team that is competitive, they will sell out. That's all it's got to be. But instead, they're like, no, like, instead of like investing in our baseball ops, like, let's maybe add another dozen ticketing folks to the thing. But we're also not going to improve the game day experience at the park. It's like, it's just such an ass backwards approach to me as an organization. So I think people are like, until we see a change in mindset, and we know where that change has to come from.
Yep.
Like that's not a secret. It's not the quiet part out loud. That is the loud part out loud.
That's right.
And until there is a change there, some people aren't going to come back. And again, I get that as well.
Understood. Got a super chat here from John Nava. He says, cheers, guys. I love Steven's insight about the White Sox.
Cheers.
Yes, he's just as pain and tortured
John.
as we are, John. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Can you tell? Yeah. Man. I think I might. I think I'm the Dodgers. So the Dodgers come to the South Side this year. I believe I'm hopeful that I'll be on that road trip. So
beautiful.
If I am, I'll try and swing by. As I affectionately called you during a game a couple years ago, my favorite degenerates in Section 108.
That was on the Apple broadcast, right? I think that was the Apple broadcast, right?
Which
we got a lot of feedback from people. Hey, Steven's talking about you guys.
Yeah. So and that day was so special for me. Like, I had my dad was in the booth, kind of watching with me, and obviously he's the reason, he's at fault for me being a White Sox fan. And we had our firstborn son, and he was on the field, and I was like really hopeful that it was going to be a fun Sox game, but no, the Guardians just bludgeoned them. And so I was like, well, shit. So excited for another go around.
Yeah, that'll be great. I hope that does happen. Last question, because we did talk about Dylan Cease a little bit already, but I wanted to get what do you think is going to happen this year with the White Sox? They're coming off 101 losses last year. The betting markets are at 62.5, 63.5. Steven, are we going to be settling in on a team that loses 100 games again? Or is this team going to surprise us a little bit and be slightly bad? Not even mediocre, but, a better team than 100 loss.
I would love to be like a fly on the wall, let alone an intern for like Fangraphs or Zips as they're doing the White Sox projections for 2024, where people are just like, I don't know. Shit. You could trip over the bar that was the 2023 season. There's no way it could be worse than that, right? But it's like, no, there's ways that it could be worse. I don't want to workshop that out. I would prefer to not experience that. Look, I last year was it was like a perfect cluster. I don't know what I candy kids. It was, it was
you
just
can curse. Please curse.
It was a perfect storm of clusterfuck for so many different reasons. It was just, whether it was health, it was underperformance, it was, it was just so many things, right? And you want to believe, not bet. I wouldn't do that. You want to believe that there's going to be some progression to the mean, right? Okay, like there's no way, like Andrew Benintendi was not 100%, nor was Tim Anderson, nor was, insert player here. So you want to believe that, okay, they're going to be healthier and more productive this year. Like, Dylan Cease, like some of the underlying metrics say that he was a little unlucky last year. And, so you want to believe that he is closer to the previous iteration as opposed to last year, or at worst, right in the middle, like somewhere in between there.
Yes.
So I want to believe that there will be some progression to the mean. I just it's tough, man. It's hard. It is hard to fully commit to that take. Again, like I know, like some Sox fans are like, "Hey, get off the fence and answer the damn question already." I just like my dad and I we in fact, right before I got on, he sent me like an article. I haven't read it yet, so I don't know which publication it was from, but it was it was like, "This is why I love White Sox fans. We're so damn cynical." And so I'm like, God, I can't wait to read what you sent me. But I did see like Kevin Pillar was in there, so I know it's going to be good. Right. So I like we talk all the time, and it's like one day we could be like, look, man, like again, like at least 3 of these guys are going to bounce back, and then the next week we could talk, and it's like, shit, like you see the moves, like the Royals are going to be competitive, the Tigers are going to be competitive, like they could finish last in this crappy ass division again. So it sort of depends on the day. I think what I am what I most want to see, because like forget 2024, like I just don't see this team's not going to win the World Series. We feel comfortable sort of agreeing on that at the very least.
I think so.
So for me, it's like, what's the long-term health of the organization? So, and what I think that they have failed at miserably, just in the last decade, is asset management. And I hate talking about it in that way, because I'm a true believer in that these players are humans, and it's not that simple. They're not just stat lines, or they're not just contracts. But like the White Sox have done a piss poor job at managing or maximizing their assets, right? And so we sort of hit on it earlier. Okay, trading Aaron Bummer and Santos. Okay, holding on to Dylan Cease, and because if he gets off to a great start the first half, when you have a clearer view of other teams' rosters and which teams are contenders and pretenders, which teams are going to be buyers, the price of the deadline, in theory, should go up from where it is now, because right now people don't know what version of Dylan Cease am I going to get. I don't want to give up that capital. So if you're Chris Getz, all right, I'm gonna hold on to this and wait until I get what I want. So all right, that's better asset management. But whether it's not giving a qualifier to Carlos Rodon, or not getting a damn thing, if you knew you were going to bring back Jose Abreu, why not give him get something for him and give him a shot at a run that year at the deadline when your team's out of it, like. Just things like that. Like, I just want to see better organizational practices. And in addition to wanting to see the further ascension of Luis Robert as a star in this game, even though now he is unquestionably heading for free agency in a handful of years.
The Boris effect.
Again, and that's another player who is unfortunately going to fall into that as long as the current iteration of the White Sox ownership exists. Luis Robert Jr. is going to make his way into asset management territory, which sucks. That sucks as a White Sox fan, and for young fans to know that 88 probably isn't going to be here long term. It's a make or break year for Yohan Moncada. Same for Eloy Jimenez. Right. So I'm not answering your question. I'm just trying to get out all of my thoughts.
No, I'm glad you're doing it because this is good. This is therapeutic to get this out there.
Yeah.
You're right. There's a lot of things going on here. Truth be told, a lot of areas with which they can improve. And I'm glad you mentioned asset management, because you're right. They were screwing up what I would call fundamental things about running a team.
Fundamental. No, totally. No, keep going.
The minor things that you can absolutely do, like when they traded Gregory Santos, that's something. We had people, we were doing a podcast, trade deadline podcast. People were suggesting trade Gregory Santos right now. He's been great. Who cares about the control? Flip him out. It was refreshing to see Getz actually do that this offseason. Say, look, we can get some stuff. Will it work out? I don't know, but let's flip the reliever and figure out. The Aaron Bummer thing, maybe some of those guys were going to be DFA'd, and it wouldn't have mattered. Just put your first in line to get them. Regardless, I was thinking outside the box and trying something here, and let's push this. And even with the edges of the roster, like a lot of people are complaining, guy didn't go out there and get big free agents. And in a way, I kind of don't want him to. I want him to figure out what he's doing in this job. He's brand new doing it. Let's take a little time to make sure you know it. But at least he's insulating the edges of the roster. Something that if Rick Hahn would have done that in the contention years, they'd have been so much better off if you had just a professional guy there instead of some minor leaguer that's going to give you a -2 WAR. Like all these things, I just want to see incremental improvements.
No, totally, 100%. Like, and we haven't even like gotten into we haven't said the term or the words player development yet, which was Chris Getz's purview, right? And I think AJ Pierzynski. I think AJ like astutely and fairly criticized that on Foul Territory, being like, "Hey, look, I love Chris Getz, play with him, whatever, but he's been in charge of player development. Who have they developed?" It's a fair question. It's a rhetorical one too to White Sox fans. The answer is no, right?
Nobody.
So, and it's not just like minor league development, big development. Dan O'Dowd, my former teammate at the network, he always used to say like development does not stop at the big league level. In fact, that's where it gets harder and most important, most pivotal.
Right.
And so, and the team hasn't been good at any stage really of the player development. In fact, they've probably harmed more players than they've developed, if that makes sense. Just with the different situations that they put people into, like, man. So those are perhaps little things within fan discussions, but those are huge issues for this organization. They have been for quite some time, and so if you could just see them string together like quality decisions, like bringing in smart people, just like those are the steps forward you're like desperate for as a Sox fan. So hopefully they get some of those in 2024. But in terms of competitiveness, I mean, who the hell knows? But because of the draft rules, right? If they suck again or worse than they did last year, they can't even do that right. Can't even do that. Right. So, so yeah. Anyway, well, that's sort of my dissertation on the 2024 season.
I love it in the comments. Absolutely love it too. Steven, thank you so much for sharing your insights on baseball as a global game, the White Sox, including the early Chris Getz GM era. Remember, we aren't trying to be right on the show. We're just trying to understand. Do you have anything you want to plug before you go, my friend?
No, I appreciate you taking several steps down on the rung from Jeff Passan to this idiot.
How dare you? You're a real Sox fan. See, this is different. I love Jeff. Okay, I love Jeff.
Yeah.
But he doesn't have a fandom basically, and he even admitted it to us. And he's good. He comes out and breaks balls. But you're a real Sox fan. This is the conversations I want to have.
Hey, look, I appreciate you. You guys have the 108 crew has been like stupidly kind to me over the years, and like well, I know there are some Sox fans who don't like my existence and are happy to throw tomatoes at me, and that's fine too. But y'all been great to me, and again, hopefully I'm on that trip so I can run into you guys in person again, and we could take another class. I could be a part of another class photo.
Nice picture, that's right.
For a game that doesn't get rained out like the last time we took one, and
that's correct.
Yeah, nothing to plug, man. I just appreciate you having me on, and yeah, hopefully we can do it again.
Awesome. Take care, Steven.
Appreciate you, Pete.
That was Steven Nelson. That was terrific. I have been wanting to talk to Steven for so long. He got a lot out there for you guys. He put a lot out into the streets there for you, and I enjoyed every bit of it. Next week's guest is actually the two knuckleheads that I share Thursdays with, Treasy E and My Sox Summer. They're going to come on and join me, and we're going to do a history of the 108 tournament. We're going to talk about various things that have gone on through this will be the 7th 108 tourney that's going to be happening very soon. We're also going to announce the number 1 seeds of the 108 tourney, and that'll be on Monday, March 4th. Thanks again to Punky's Pizza and Pasta, the best sponsor. The 108 family is up in the YouTube comments. Appreciate all you smashing the like button, comments, and of course, drinks and tips. I love all you, and I'll see you on Thursday. Bye-bye.